information is required by the panel on any particular matter, the decision may be deferred for either a further public meeting or to be dealt with electronically. As I've indicated, this meeting is being recorded, and the audio recording will be on the Council's website, so there's been no other recording of this, please. If I now move to the first item on our business, so you will get, Andrea, are you able to do some timing there? Andrea?
Sorry, I've got Will on timing.
Yep, your timing? Okay, thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we do ask that it is our usual practice that each speaker is limited to 3 minutes, and including the applicant and community groups. So if you could try and stick to those times, that would be helpful. At the end of each speaker, I will just check with the members of the panel if they have any particular questions they wish to raise with you. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next person. I think that's all the introduction I need to put at this stage. So if we move to the first item, which is listed as 169 to 181 Dolphin Street, Coogee. And the first person I have registered is Councillor Nielsen. Councillor Nielsen?
Thank you, Chair. Support approval of this application for the following reasons. Pedestrian access is an important issue which has not been satisfactorily dealt with. Most people walking through Dolphin Street, heading north to Beach Street or east to Dunningham Reserve, take the shortcut through the area proposed for the tables and seats. Tables and seats will cause increased congestion for people, prams and wheelchairs, etc. The same issues of congestion would be experienced when heading south from Beach Street or from Dunningham Reserve. Safety and security concerns regarding antisocial behaviour, concerns regarding alcohol consumption on public land, noting that the surrounding public areas, including the beach and park, have a zero alcohol policy. This is a very significant point in relation to this proposal. The existing tables and seats are already a major concession to their business needs, I would suggest. I don't believe that it complies with the relevant environment planning instruments, including B2 local centre zone. The proposal is not consistent with the specific objectives of the zone in that the proposed activity and will form, notwithstanding the recommended conditions, will result in unreasonable impact on the amenity of surrounding residents, and the proposal will unreasonably impact upon pedestrian amenity and access. And RE1 public recreation zone, the proposal will result in adverse impacts upon the aesthetic values of the site, especially as viewed from Dunningham Reserve. And 6.2.1 clause 5.10 or 10, heritage conservation. The proposal will impact upon the heritage significance of the site and the setting of the heritage item. In relation to acoustic amenity concerns, residents nearby are already severely impacted by noise and sound from this location, and to have more tables and seats on the eastern side of the building will increase the potential for disturbance. The police report also had concerns in relation to the increase in ambient noise associated with the area. And the police report also raised concerns with regard to a neighbourhood amenity and safety and security, such as the venue is one of the larger capacity venues within the LGA and regularly reaches capacity, which can cause queuing in the areas around the hotel. The wait period can be extensive, being several hours. The queuing was previously extended down the stairs adjacent to the Beach Street entrance and within the area proposed to incorporate the new seating. As such, concerns are raised regarding unnecessary contact and potential conflict between those who are already patrons and those who are wishing to enter. I believe this is a very likely unfortunate outcome. The police report also noted that the subject venue is featured within the declared violent venue scheme under Schedule 4 of the Liquor Act 2007 and can be subject to violent incidents at the entrances in close proximity to the existing tables. The use of the area outside operational hours may be difficult to manage and result in persons occupying the seating after hours, potentially causing antisocial behaviour. I think a great deal of weight should be given to this police report. Conditions of consent will go some way to addressing some issues, but I don't believe they can fully solve the potential problems associated with this proposal. I respectfully disagree with the conclusion on page 15 of your report. I believe all the reasons for approval can be refuted, and the outcome would be far superior for the residents and visitors to the eastern frontage of the Coogee Pavilion if this proposal was refused, and I sincerely hope this application will be refused. Thank you, Chair and panel.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Nelson. Panel members, any questions of the Councillor at this stage? No? Okay. I don't. Thank you. Councillor Churi?
Thank
you. You're not. You must be muted.
Thank you for letting me speak. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
That's okay.
I'm also objecting to this this application for outside seating at Coogee Pavilion. To me, it is one of the reasons is its development by stealth. The original application for outdoor dining was, fairly small, and then slowly there's creep and extra public land is being taken over by chairs and tables. One of my major concerns is the fact that the rest of the public land at Coogee does not allow alcohol, and that was given that was declared because of advice by the police. But however, we're looking to approve privatised drinking at this venue when the rest of the people who come to Coogee Beach cannot have a glass of wine with their sandwich at the end of the day. If this is approved, I just feel that the structures should be removed at night. I don't think if everybody's considering it just to be footpath dining, an application for footpath dining, it's every other place in the LGA has to take their furniture away at the end of the evening, not leave it there permanently placed on what is public land. So those are my major objections, Mr. West.
Okay, thank you very much. Panel members, any questions of Councillor at this stage?
No.
Okay, thank you. Next is Debbie Nichols. Debbie, you're on the line. Debbie? I see lots of faces. I don't know which is Debbie. Sorry. Is Debbie there? I'll come back in a minute. Maybe is Joanne Dalton there? Yes, Joanne. Yeah. Okay. Unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah. Good.
Great. Thanks. I just wanted to say, I think is it Councillor Nielsen raised a lot of probably the items that generally cover the concern. I live in the local area and use the beach a lot. I'm an ocean swimmer. I also actually am a patron of the pavilion and occasionally have dinners there with my family and drinks with my friends, and I think it's generally quite a good venue. I'm also an architect, and so you'd have to say probably necessarily I'm a slightly pro-development. But I do have to say I think that the public's view throughout COVID has fundamentally changed the way we perceive public space and its use. And I think that this application has failed to address that fundamental shift in the public view of public space. And I think the use of fixed furniture items does render the space exclusively theirs, irrespective of the hours. And that's certainly the perception that people that move through that space at any time of day or night get the impression of. And I also think that it's not adequate to merely address the application as an application that manages impacts or mitigation impacts to the public. I think there has to be a demonstrable benefit to the public. And at the moment, I don't see that these permanent structures, for which are predominantly used young people having fun, which is, yay them. That's like if I could turn back the clock. But it is a very specific type of use. There are risks around antisocial behaviour which can be managed, but it does really make that area feel a very different type of area to, say, the grassed area. I do think it's not equitable that other public dining and drinking places like Bar Zero must pack away their furniture each night, and that they don't have fixed furniture. And I think that area is better not for having fixed furniture there. So I would just like the panel to seriously consider the way the public has shifted their view about its relationship to public space. I actually think that businesses that do activate a space create benefit for the community, but not to the exclusion of all other possibilities for council and for the community to that area. Council does have the opportunity to activate that space, whether it's with fixed ping pong tables or whether it's with also fixed seating with backgammon boards or chess boards. It's a great spot to sit in summer when the afternoon sun is hitting. So I just think that it's a zone that should be shared in the full meaning of the word shared. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the panel? Yes, Kerry.
Joanne, I'm wondering if you're a patron and you are inside the venue looking out towards the beach, how would those structures impact on your view and the patron's amenity from the inside out?
I think there's no doubt that the tables that there's sort of like tables that sit against that window and look out to the window. I think they're just going to be a less desirable place to sit for the patrons inside the pub, perhaps if there's public using them. But the fact is that it's public space, and when you're the proprietor of a venue that takes occupation of a site like that, you understand all the constraints that come with that site.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Rick Daly. Rick there? Yes, Rick's there.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm a local resident and I don't have any to report. I remember living around Clovelly in the early 1980s and seeing when Beach Street, you could actually drive down Beach Street. And I remember rejoicing with other young people when they were the council proclaimed they were going to close the area, and they proclaimed that it was to open up the foreshore to the public. I also remember the colours with the old rusty roof and the BP sign, and what a dilapidated building it was, and the fact that it has been developed is a positive thing. However, I do object to the use of public space. This is land that has been proclaimed to the public, and I agree with the other speaker talking about the slow, stealth encroachment of public space by business. I also understand that during COVID there is a lot of young people who are unemployed and could be employed by the palace for employment. But I think if the council is fair income about encouraging young people to be employed, there are lots of other ways to do that without encroaching on public space. The area, as other people have said, is an area where people enter from the LGA to the beach, and they also, when people are walking past. On a very crowded summer's day, that area is totally occupied by members of the public. If it's a permanent seating area, it'll look like something from the Amalfi Coast, around Pontano, where we have exclusive use by people who can afford to sit and drink. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think it's a strong equity issue. I've also noticed that when there has been people on the beach, the music and the noise from the terrace permeates all over the beach, and that's not the sort of I think we want for our public beaches, as well as consumption of alcohol. I don't agree it's a good role model for young people. It's an area where people meet sometimes and then discuss where they're going to go. And I think if we put permanent structures there, that's going to eliminate that, and it's going to be a bottleneck. It's going to funnel people into that area that is already a public walkway. When police are called to the beach or emergency vehicles, that's the area that they come and they enter that area. If it's already occupied by plant boxes and tables, I think that would restrict access. I also believe that Coogee is slowly being overdeveloped. I understand that Sydney is a growing international city. However, the particular nature of access is very important. And whilst I'm also a patron of Coogee Palace, I've used it sometimes. It's a wonderful place to go and show off the visitors. It's not something that we want to have expanding onto the public walkways. So I encourage the council to look favourably on rejecting that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Any questions from panel members? Thank you. Marianne Lynch. Is Marianne there? Yes. We'll have to unmute there, Marianne. Yes.
Hi, sorry, I thought I did. Can you hear me now?
Yep, can hear you now.
Great. Thanks for letting me talk. Look, my concerns are pretty much echoed by the previous speakers. Just to say, I've lived in the area for 30 years and more, and we support what's happened down at the Palace. It's a great addition to Coogee. It's beautifully done. Very, it's well. All of it's good. It doesn't need to be any bigger. This is just going to increase by a large number of I think 50 people, the number of outdoor dining spaces, and it's just already big enough. There's already a lot of noise issues. I'm not affected by the noise, but I've got plenty of neighbours. I live not too far away. They have to keep their windows shut on hot summer nights because it's just too noisy, the noise coming from the pavilion. So another 50 outdoor tables is not going to be great for the residents. You can talk about the fact of what council's doing on Coogee Bay Road with outdoor dining, which I think is fantastic and great for those establishments and for people, but that is not alienating usable public space. That's been done by closing off the road and changing traffic management. The space that's proposed to be fixed tables and chairs in it is actually space that's at the moment available for all kinds of passive recreation. It's flexible, and that should be the principle by which this is governed. We shouldn't be giving over valuable public space for one commercial operator. And I totally agree with the previous speakers that putting fixed chairs and tables there is completely inequitable for the surrounding businesses as well. I just don't really see the justification. They've already got 2 outdoor areas, one of which is already on public land and alienates a lot of public land. And then what they've done there, unfortunately, is they've made access difficult for people to walk between that outdoor area and the building, which should be open for people to walk through for wheelchairs and prams, because they have roped off areas and planter boxes that have been put in that space, which should be open to the public. And so I don't think it's a great example of what they've done there, and I'm really opposed to that being expanded to the eastern area. It's an area, it's a flat area, as people walk through there during Corona, when during the lockdown, seriously, it was so busy down at Coogee, and we need every bit of public space that we've got, not to be blocked off by permanent furniture, just for one commercial establishment. And yeah, look, it's just a principle for me. I think that we should not be allowing more privatisation of valuable public space for no tangible public benefit. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Panel members, any questions? No? Okay, thank you. Let's go back. Is Debbie Nichols? I can't see her online. I don't think Debbie's there. She's registered to speak. Okay. Right, we now have a representative of the applicant, Mr. Bob Chambers. Bob, you are online? Yep.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Liz. Thank you. Yeah, Bob Chambers on behalf of the applicant. As you'll recall, there was a prior application lodged as a 455, which came before the panel in September, and it fell short on a technicality, which was that it should be the subject of the DA, which is what you're now dealing with. But like the prior application, this application's supported by a very comprehensive report from the council planning officers, and I think that report deals with all of the matters that have been raised by speakers prior to me. So I'll make a few quick points and then go to some of those reasons that have been given now and respond to them. But as we emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic, outdoor seating and dining is increasingly super important. And there are many initiatives in place across Sydney which indicate that and promote increased opportunities for outdoor dining, for people to eat outside. And in that regard, the additional seating for which approval is sought is a direct response to Council's broader initiatives to provide more seating for outdoor dining. The panel will be aware of the Council's recent initiatives in Coogee Bay Road as part of the Streets and Shared Spaces programme, providing increased opportunities for diners. And just incidentally, you may be aware that in Sydney City Council, outdoor dining's recently been made exempt from the need to require development consent. The Coogee Pavilion is a world-class food and beverage premises, and those of you who remember the old Beach Palace Hotel will know how significant the improvements that have been made to that are over the last 10 years. It's been transformed into a highest quality premises, and to the best of my knowledge, there are no real or significant issues with the existing seating, and that's recognised in the officer's report. The outdoor seating that's proposed provides a wonderful addition to the ability for people to dine outside. And this is an opportunity which then is provided to all diners, including families with kids, families with pets, to enjoy alfresco dining in a wonderful setting. And this additional seating is very suitably located. The paved promenade there, which extends to the wall of the promenade adjacent to the beach, it's over 20 metres wide, and the outer edge of the seating area is only 5 metres, around 5 metres, 5.2 metres from the building facade. So there's an abundance of space for people to still move around even when this seating is in place. Now, the original application which was lodged was for 9 tables and 54 seats, and the officer's report which you received identifies, as a result of the council engineer picking up the location of a drainage grate, that only 1 table needs to be removed to accommodate the grate. And I think that you should have before you a plan which was tabled yesterday, which is a response to the council officer's report. And that plan shows 8 tables and 48 seats. And it's that plan which I'd like you to give consideration to approving. Because the removal of the 3 tables, as recommended by the officers, is a bit unnecessary in order for the 1 table that needs to be removed to avoid conflict with the grate. Now, just in real quickly, in relation to the issues which have been raised.
Just very quickly, if we can, thanks.
Yes. In relation to, I think some reference was made that it is potentially problematic, but please be aware it's subject to a condition which is a reviewable condition, which in a year council will review the condition. That's part and parcel of the recommended conditions of consent. The police have recommended conditions, and the police conditions are part and parcel of the consent. The seating can only be used by diners. It's not for outdoor drinking. It's for people who are drinking and dining. They've got to be dining. In relation to noise, there's an acoustic report which says there's no adverse acoustic issues arising from this outdoor seating. So I really would urge the panel to adopt the recommendation of the officers and to approve the outdoor seating. Just in relation to the outlook, remember that the tables are at a particular height, and to the east of the tables there's a wall where the bicycles get put, and then beyond that there's another wall before the
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chambers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Panel members, any questions of Mr. Chambers? Okay. Well, thank you all. We will certainly take into account everybody's views that have been put to us on that particular one when we go into our deliberations later. Thank you all very much. We move on to the next. Thank you. Move on to the next item. Okay. Thank you. Move on to the next item now. It's 190 to 192 Oberon Street, Coogee. The first person registered is Mr. Gary Gordon.
Gary Boylan
Mr. Gordon, you
is
there?
now exiting.
Yes.
Is now
Mr.
exiting.
Gordon?
Is now exiting.
Mr. Gordon, I can see that you're online. You're online there. Could you unmute? Mr. Gordon, can you unmute, please? Sure how I'm going to get Mr. Gordon to unmute here.
Hello.
Here we go. Here, right. Okay. Mr. Gordon, over to you.
Sorry, I'm not sure if my name is Gary Gordon. Is this in connection with the Dolphin Street property?
No, this is now to do with 190 to 192 Oberon Street.
Okay. Apologies. When I had spoken to Ingrid, she said I was 8th on the list, and so I'd assumed that I was going to be much later than this. So you caught me a little bit unaware. I just stepped out of the bathroom, so apologies for that. So basically, the development, we have had many meetings with the RLPP in terms of the original development and opposition, purely because it sits, although it's zoned R3, it has a sympathetic transition to R2. And in terms of the current DA proposal, which is really minor changes to the original DA, there were 3 areas of concern. I'll go through them very quickly. The first one was the acoustics. They have moved to move the air conditioning units onto the roof. They, from a visual perspective, I don't think they'll have much impact, but it doesn't seem like they've had a proper report that says the noise is going to be settled or not. I don't know, with the combination of all 23 or 15 apartments or however many units, and all we're asking is that they actually give us the correct information. So before it's approved, if the sound is not going to be within reasons, that it actually is dealt with and a different position located, rather than waiting to see if it is an issue and then how do we deal with it post the development. The second thing is twofold. The one is to do with the floor space ratio, and in terms of the changes to the floor space ratio, they are predominantly internal, so obviously they have no impact to the neighbours. But I did want to highlight to the Randwick planning, to the panel, which is obviously in the report, that when they did the original application, there was a 10% increase on the floor space ratio, and now it's gone up to 20%. And the only area where it does concern us is on the lower ground units facing the south, where they had a recess area, so some of the outdoor amenity would be sort of in like an L-shaped in like an alcove, whereas now the building is all being pushed out so that the actual units get extra space. And really, where we are sitting from a noise perspective is the original developments were 30 meters from the boundary, similar to what ours are. And now we have the potential for 5 units, all with people being on their balconies. And we feel that it is just unreasonable development creep from the developers in terms of taking the extra, and that for us particularly, having the outdoor area partly recessed under the building will actually muffle the noise further. And so we ask the panel to consider where they're now going 200 meters more than what is allowed, so 20% more, that it's that's unreasonable. And then finally, our major concern was to do with the balconies on the southern side, where as part of the original DA, they were taken out completely. And you know, there were a whole lot of concessions given in terms of spacing, so you know, we thought it was a reasonable thing. And really what our concern here is that these landscaped areas are significantly wide. The drawings show a planter box, and what we worried is by stealth that eventually those are fully occupied balconies. So if they are going to be landscaped, and if those outdoor units, if those bedrooms have a Juliet balcony, surely there can be a way to access the planter boxes to service them. I'm not sure what a 600 millimeter, you know, if the sliding doors could be shifted in a way that you can have full access to the balcony to service it. Why do you need an additional 600 millimeters of balcony to service it? And so we are, you know, the privacy concerns were discussed at lengthy detail in the original DA application, and you know, like I say, with a 600 millimeter wide balcony, there can be a table and chairs. There can be 4 sets of tables and chairs, and so we essentially could have on the ground level, on the level 1 and on level 2, plus the people downstairs, that we could have 5 groups of people all being on their balconies simultaneously. And they've got balconies in their front. And really, as a group of residents, what we're trying to say is we've never had an issue with the development. Developments happen all the time, but that we are wanting something that works for everybody. And we feel that the developers are only focused on their occupants, whereas us as residents are concerned with all of the occupants.
Because you were late, you may have missed me saying that the speakers are restricted to 3 minutes.
Apologies, I am aware of it. I just didn't realise that I'd gone over it.
It's all right. Anyway, look, thank you. Any questions from panel members at this stage? No. Sorry, Ms. Kerry.
I'd just like to ask a question, Mr. Gordon.
Yes.
Whereabouts do you live, please?
So I am one of the south. So I'm the owner of 262 Rainbow Street.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
But,
at the back of the building.
Yes.
Right. Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Thank you for your time and giving me the opportunity to speak.
That's okay. Thank you. Now we have, on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Anthony Petros. Mr. Petros, are you there? Yes?
I am, thank you.
Good. Yep.
Thank you, panel members. I'll be brief.
You're right.
The applicant accepts each of the conditions as modified, and we thank council for the professional way in the manner in this application has been assessed. But just to respond to some issues raised by Mr. Gordon, you'll note on the site analysis plan, plan DA1003, the extreme separation distances between the subject site and Mr. Gordon's property to the south. Such distances are in the order of 34 metres between habitable to habitable areas, which would be aware is well beyond 12 metres, which is the typical accepted separation distance. The balconies that are sought to be provided a 600 mil trafficable area is for maintenance. You will note that these are balconies of bedrooms, they're not primary living areas, and they're south facing, so the intent of council's condition will still be maintained. The area at the base that the gentleman was concerned with is extended, which will provide additional natural light and living area to the living areas on the ground floor areas. You'll also note that these areas are actually excavated slightly below existing ground level, and therefore the elevations in the section show that such areas would in fact be indiscernible.
That's what I went
the areas beyond that are already accessible as well, private open space. So I don't necessarily agree with the comments that pushing the private open space area further south would generate any impact. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think the report covers the issues and modifications very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Panel members, any questions? Yes, Heather. And then I'll come to you, Cara.
Hi, Anthony. I've just got a question about the south-facing balconies. I understand that in the original DA, the balconies were deleted altogether. So now I understand there's a desire to put a very narrow, is it 600 millimetre balcony off the bedrooms. But why do you need the planter boxes? Surely the building would have been cut back completely. Why the planter boxes?
They were for privacy measures to the neighbours to the south, despite this is something we actually did cover with at the LPP on the previous occasion. As you know, the separation distance in the rear setback was beyond that required, but it's actually just providing a substantially greater degree of privacy.
So if you didn't have the planter boxes, you still have the same separation from the balcony though?
That's correct. And this is only just to provide maintenance to the planter bed. Rather than climbing out through a window, it allows you to be accessing in a safe manner.
I'm just saying, why do you need the planter boxes at all? So if you don't have the planter boxes, you don't need the balcony?
Yeah, that would be the case, yes, because it's for maintenance, yes.
Okay. And is it intended that those planter boxes, I know we don't have a strata application before us, assuming the building will be strated, but would those planter boxes belong to that particular unit and that be part of their strata lot to maintain?
That's correct.
And the same as the one above on the next level up, where that whole unit has got greenery around it, unit 202. Would that planter bed, if I'm reading the plans correctly, is that landscaping that's at the same level as unit 202?
Yeah, the plan's 2004. Yeah, that's the one I understand you're referring to.
Yes.
Yeah, that shows it wrapping right around. And you can see the section diagram as well in 3100 and 3101. Each show that detail. But I understand that some tenants or owners may maintain their gardens in a varying manner. So I think there could be a condition imposed, I suppose, that allows for that to be maintained on a regular basis so that you maintain consistency of growth.
And we understand there wasn't an amended landscape plan lodged with the mod application. But is there one? Is there a landscape plan that goes with this modification application?
Just check that out, sorry. Dr. Liam Hancock in standby, yes.
Interject, there wasn't an amended landscape design with the section 455.
You saying there was or wasn't? Sorry.
There was not.
Was not. Sorry.
Was not an amended landscape.
But wouldn't there? I'm just querying why you wouldn't need one. Because you've got new landscape. The DA that was issued had the balconies deleted.
I think it was subject to the condition.
There wasn't any change to the ground floor landscaping. It was only planter boxes on balconies, on those southern-facing balconies. If I could just to respond to the previous comment about referring to whether we need the balcony at all. On the back of what Anthony just mentioned about adding the planter box itself, adding additional privacy to neighbouring properties, I think it's also worth considering that having that planter box there also offers privacy from the units below that may be occupied, the private open space, external area that may be potentially occupied, and occupants then looking up or being able to look up into those bedrooms. I think the planter box allows for privacy between occupants of the development as well as neighbouring properties to the rear.
Okay, thank you. Cara, you had a question? I have to unmute Cara.
Sorry.
Okay.
Two questions. One will stay on this topic of the planters. I can see from the section now that obviously the planters are raised, and I can't see a dimension, but if the balcony is 600 millimetres in depth, then the planter is a lot more. Wouldn't you then need, if the balcony is being used to access the planter, wouldn't you then need a balustrade on the edge of the planter if people are climbing up or trying to get into those beds, like at the far end, to remove plants and maintain them from a safety perspective? And I guess that I get a little bit worried about that because we didn't see on the plans that there were any gates or anything like that. So obviously it is a sense of openness. But if we're looking at level 2 in particular, where you've got the planter going around the sides of the building that aren't accessible from the balcony, how are they proposed to be maintained?
So
who's going to answer that, Liam or Anthony?
Yeah, I can answer that. That's fine. In reference to the balconies on level 1, essentially the planter box acts as the balustrade. The planter is 1 metre high and 1 metre deep. So the planter itself acts as that safety measure. In terms of the uppermost level, level 2, in terms of maintenance to those areas, that would be done via a winch. Obviously, it would be too difficult to maintain those from that 600 zone, so it would be done via an irrigation system, integrated irrigation system, and then potentially via a winch.
So is that the strata, that manager that would arrange for that, or is it not the resident?
That would be a strata.
Okay. And in relation, my other question related to the air conditioning, and I had a similar question to the one that was raised in terms of an acoustic assessment and perhaps what acoustic assessment has already been done to date in terms of relocating them to the roof. I know that there are proposed conditions, but I'd just like to understand with a little bit more certainty that those conditions could actually be met.
Yeah, certainly. Just in terms of the AC equipment, including the screens, none of which exceed the maximum height standard. Also, the proposed photovoltaic cells, they're also sort of installed on the southern building. They won't be visible. They'll be flush with the roof and set behind the parapet of the building.
Yeah, not so much. I'm more concerned with the acoustic impacts than the visual.
Yeah, acoustically, I think it's worth mentioning that they're a considerable distance away from neighbouring properties. And council, as you mentioned, council have also put in the standard acoustic condition that would obviously need to be met. So we're more than happy to ensure that acoustically they meet the requirements that council condition.
Yeah, I guess my question was: have you had any consultant test but yes, in particular, that they won't be able to be heard for however long within those hours. So the VNS has that done.
Yeah, so to date we haven't had the testing done, but in order to get OC, we would need to have that testing done in order to achieve OC. So that was something that will need to be done.
Okay, thank you.
Kerry, question?
My questioning is about the air conditioning too. What was the rationale? Originally you had planned them for the basement and now they've been moved to the top, and I'm worried about the visual and the acoustic of them.
Yeah, I think the original GA proposal had the inclusion of stacker parking, and that's now being removed in this submission.
We need to respond to those.
Yeah, so it was in the removal of that stacker parking, it reduced the amount of space in the basement to accommodate the air conditioning. So thinking behind moving up to the roof is that it's in a spot that's below the high plane, it's away from any visual impact, and as I said, will be addressing any acoustics.
So, did you gain a bedroom or any communal space by moving the air conditioning upstairs?
There was additional communal space added when we removed the stackers. So it wasn't necessarily directly due to removing the air conditioning, but I think that was an area where there was air conditioning units located. So it was partly due to the relocation of those air conditioning units. But as I said, it was to provide a significant amount of communal space that we feel significant increase, improvement to the amenity of the development and its occupants, all within the approved envelope.
Okay. So could the air conditioning be relocated back into that area? Is it feasible?
No, I don't believe that's feasible.
So if it was approved, following on from Kerry's question, if it was approved there in the first place, you're saying it wasn't feasible to begin with?
I think what we're saying is that this is an improved outcome. I think if it is located down in that area, any issues concerning acoustics would be considerably greater for the occupants within the building than they would be for neighbouring properties on the roof.
That would have been considered when you put in the DA though, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Or would that have been considered with the DA was first considered or prepared?
It was considered. It was considered, but we just believe this to be a better outcome, a genuinely better outcome.
I've got a query about the communal area. It looks like it's a gym. Is that the case?
Yes. Yeah. We're terming this a wellness room, so it's not necessarily a gym in its traditional sense. It could be used as a yoga room, meditation space, other such kind of well-being activities that that could be utilised by the residents.
And it's only for the use of the residents of the building, like it'll be community space.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, correct.
And just one more question about the proposed new bedrooms on that floor. Particularly the most western bedroom. It looks to me when you the area outside the window is there's a pool directly above it. I'm just a bit concerned about the amenity of that bedroom because it will look out onto, there won't be sky above it. Partially, from what I can read from the drawing, the easternmost bedroom, the window will open partially to sky, but the most western bedroom is tucked in closest to the communal area, there's a building on the level above that will be covering the area. How does that get light? How does that get light?
The room on the western side of that area is actually a study, it's not a bedroom. There's only one bedroom in that lower level, and that's on the eastern edge.
Oh, it's labelled bed 2 on my drawing.
No, that's the number of beds in the unit, I think.
That's the number of beds in the overall unit, correct.
Oh, okay, so, but it's still a habitable room. How will it get light?
There is a window to the south that has an openable screen that offers privacy to the corridor, so it will receive daylight through there, indirect light from that eastern elevation.
The eastern elevation.
Can you see the planter just adjacent to the south of that study space? That's a low-level planter, and there's a window going into that study space.
Yeah, but there's building above it, isn't there?
There is some building above it, but when the space is compliant with BCA, and it achieves the minimum 10% of the floor area of the roof. The building achieves the minimum 10% to the floor space of the roof.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Heather.
Sorry, just say something about the air conditioning units.
Yes.
Sorry, it's just something we've encountered on another job where the basement was semi-enclosed and did have some ventilated grills on the side, which is akin to how the existing AC units were approved, was the approved basement plan. Advice from the air conditioning engineer in that was that it would be far better performing and more quiet if it was actually on the roof. So in terms of performance, they're significantly improved if they've got greater access to fresh air. And if you look at the montage on the front, you can see that it is already public domain at any point, more from the neighbour due to the setbacks.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for all those comments. The questions from the panel, we'll certainly take that into account and having our deliberation later on.
Thank you.
Okay. The next matter is 635 to 635 Anzac Parade. And first person on the register is Helen Armstrong. Helen?
Yes.
Yes, over to you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Very well.
Let it open all for ages.
You're on. You're on here.
I'm on here.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what I'm doing is representing Saving Sydney's Trees, and I want to make a submission for this particular development because it requires, as it stands, the removal of 2 mature trees on one of the site boundaries. And we, as Saving Sydney's Trees, the organisation, would ask that this proposal be rejected for a number of reasons. In particular, the Council's commitment to address the current inadequate canopy cover of the municipality, which is less than 15%, and the obligations under the fact that Randwick Council has signed the climate emergency and seeks to establish at least 40% canopy as soon as possible. So what we would ask is that these 2 trees that are designated to be felled be retained. And Council has formal procedures for the care of trees in its Regional Environment Plan Clause 5.9 and in the DCP Part 5. So there are established mechanisms. As well, there are the Australian standards, in particularly the guidelines that are to do with managing trees on development sites. So I'd just like to quickly clarify 4 issues. The first one is about the root system, the root protection. It's important that the 2 trees that exist, that further damage is prevented and that their root system is rehabilitated. And this can be achieved by following the standards, and this particularly involves putting decking over the root system, and also there is the potential for marked angle parking to reduce future impact from the car park on the root system. The second thing that's important is the trunk and canopy care, and a fine analysis of the arborist's review, which has already been presented, is actually needed. And in that, we could identify the selective pruning and guying using the COBRA method, which I've given the link to make sure that the trees are stable, and also any remedial treatment that may include insect attack and so on. And the repair to the damage that's already been done to the trunk of one of the trees associated with the current fencing. The third point, I'll just quickly make.
It's a quick point.
It's a very quick point and an important one, sorry. The significance here is that those trees are part of a wildlife corridor that goes from Anzac Parade through to Snake Park. And it's very important under the revisions of the Biodiversity Conservation Act that these be mapped because, and they include the trees nominated, because there's clearly a network of individual trees through that area that are most important for habitat maintenance. And just quickly, the security issues, which is why the trees are asked to be removed. I've supplied some examples of different types of fencing that could be used near the trees, and these are used in schools and other places where trees and the security fencing coexist.
Thank you very much. Panel members, any questions at this stage? Yes, Heather?
We've seen the council officers report that the council's tree management officer or arborist has identified that there's problems with the current trees and with the types of the species. So do you have any particular view on the council's comments regarding the health and vigour of the current trees? You're saying they could be rehabilitated. You spoke about measures to protect them, but it sounds like from reading the comments in the assessment report, it sounds like they're in decline now.
Well, certainly they could be rehabilitated and reinvigorated. And this, I think, under the Biodiversity Act, this concern about urban trees now, particularly mature trees, is to use the skills that exist in arboriculture to rehabilitate these trees. And they require very little boosting to start the growth again. Singapore, of course, is the example that we all use.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Kerry?
I just wanted to make a comment. I like the fact that you've come up with some options about the trees as far as rehabilitation goes, taking over the courtyard, and also the angle parking. And the different sort of fencing. Do you have any other options that you've thought of when you've been brainstorming possibilities and ways to retain the trees?
No, mostly we focused on the arboriculture, such as the cobra bracing and guying, and selective pruning and insect remediation.
All right, thank you, Helen.
Okay. Now we have Christy Hutchinson. Christy, you're on the line now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. West. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you. I'm a digital planning consultant who's acting for the applicants here, which being the Kingsford Maroubra Hebrew Congregation Limited. I do also have the architect and a client representative on the line as well, if the panel wishes to ask any questions of them. Firstly, I'd like to thank the council staff for their efforts with respect to this application, and we are very pleased with the recommendations that have been put forward. Now more than ever, however, the importance of security across the globe is front and centre of many minds, and with the events of recent weeks in relation to terror events, particularly in Vienna, the need for protection of place is increasingly evident. With those aspects in mind, government grants have been provided to provide a range of religious institutions to pursue security measures that enable both community safety immediately to a premises and more broadly to protect them from threat. The application seeks to rely upon the use of the grant to implement the proposed works at the site by providing a new boundary wall and reinstating the existing car parking area, removing 2 trees and constructing a new entry and awning to provide an improved presentational appearance to the rear street frontage. The purpose of the interface is to ensure that a far improved streetscape appearance of the site is evident over the existing situation, such that it will improve the visual context of the locality. With regard to the tree removal, while it will enable the implementation of the proposal in a safe manner, such that it will ensure the key principles of security are achieved, and given the health of the trees, which has been recognised by both our arborist and council's arborist, we do believe it's a response to the application. The damage that's been caused by the roots to the existing wall further exacerbates the need for the replacement in a sensible manner of the wall, not the trees. We do note that Council is seeking to impose conditions in relation to deep soil planting, which we don't have an objection to providing per se. We would just ask the panel consider if this planting area could potentially be placed on the western side of the entry instead of the eastern side of the entry. The difficulty coming back to if there is a planter that needs to be provided to contain soil within that area, it would effectively provide a stepping stone back up against that wall, which is the exact situation that we are trying to prevent. So we do have no difficulty in providing it, but we just ask it on the alternate side. Outside of that, if I could just address the concerns previously raised by the previous speaker. While we do accept that there is obviously an increasing shortage of vegetation within the local government area, we are in a position where the trees have caused significant damage to the property as it stands with respect to roots breaking through concrete. In that regard, and we did suggest this to the council officer on site, if the council was of a mind or the panel was of a mind to approve the application, we'd have no objection to a condition being imposed that required us to provide replacement planting off-site. I'm sure council had some sort of scheme that the applicant could tap into for replacement planting, so we're definitely not adverse to that outcome at all. Outside of that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the panel may have.
Thanks, Christy. Panel members, questions?
I'd like to ask if Randwick Lane, which is at the side, I know it's not immediately beside the development, but is that completely closed off to the public, or do the bollards get removed and that area is accessed?
If I could just defer there to our client representative, Mr. Pearl, if he could assist me there. Anthony, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Thank you, everyone. Yes, so the answer
is now joining.
The answer to that question is that those bollards are there, and they are removable, but only in very restricted circumstances. So the reality is that they're not. They're permanently there. Randwick Lane doesn't provide a thoroughfare through to Anzac Parade. That was that was a security issue, and it was a council issue as well, because there were used to be a lot of trucks and things using that as a passageway, which posed a lot of issues.
Okay, because I know one of the concerns is about maintaining access during the construction period, because there's a one-way, so you can't even go back out up Randwick Lane to get to the west. So potentially that area that could be planted up, if that's something in the future that councils, it's not ever going to be opened up, and concerned about security, then whether or not that's a potential place for mature trees to be replaced in the area. Just a thought. That's all.
All right. Heather, you had some questions?
Yeah, thanks, Gary. I was just asking or clarifying what's driving the removal of the Melaleuca tree, because it seems to me that it's being replaced with the car parking space, and that's a consequence of the extension of the entry area. Is that the case?
No, it's not. if I may, it's the same number of car parking spaces are being retained on site as are currently there at the moment. So we're not seeking to increase the parking.
No, I can tell that, but if the entry area hadn't been expanded towards the south, then you wouldn't need to move the car spaces along. Because where the tree is now, is there now proposed to be a car space?
Yes, but there's a car space there at the moment.
No, there's a tree there.
And there's a shed.
And a shed. So I'm sorry. I take issues with the trees and the health of the trees and so on, but I'm just thinking that the reason why the tree needs to go is more in order to expand the entry area, not so that you can maintain the same number of car spaces, because you could still maintain the tree and not expand the entry area as much. Is that the case?
That's not the driving force behind it, Miss Wharton. It's actually the driving force behind it is the potential for somebody to actually climb and scale that tree, and therefore climb over the fence. That's the primary purpose of the removal of the tree, nothing to do with the car parking or the extension of the pedestrian area.
Okay,
so pedestrian entrance.
Right. So even with the higher fence, you're still worried about someone climbing the tree.
Yeah, even if we weren't making the improvement to the pedestrian entrance, we'd still be seeking removal of the tree, having regard to the wall.
Right. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, Kerry, and then I'll come to you, Cara.
Thank you. I did notice there's a lot of security cameras at the back of the property there. Somehow, are there some alarm systems? Just kind of saving the tree versus chopping it down because you're worried about somebody climbing in. Has that happened previously, as it is at the moment?
Mr. Powell, if I could ask you to answer that, please.
Yes, we have had issues in the past where people have climbed those trees, and that has definitely posed an issue. And I can also let you know that those security cameras are linked to a central security community group, which has direct links with the police. So those are heavily monitored on a central basis continuously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cara. I have to unmute Cara.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. West. I know that the trees in this case do obviously provide a landscape quality to the laneway, and that it's not just a service laneway. There's a lot of residential properties with their principal address on that laneway. But I do recognise, obviously, the issues that are being put forward with regard to the health of the tree, in particular to do with security. But I'm wondering whether you would have any objection to planting a replacement tree within the existing courtyard that is to be, I think, to be made good or to be approved, so that there is still, over time, a tree that will have a good tree canopy and address the scenic quality of the street, but it will be within your own courtyard, so that it takes away the risk of anybody from the external area being able to scale it. So I would think that would probably be able to address the security concern. I just wondered what your thoughts are in relation to that.
Thanks, Ms. Grayson. We did actually look at that as one of the options for pursuing additional landscaping on the site. One of the difficulties to some extent with that is that area that sits behind the courtyard is principally used by children, effectively as a play space. So we saw that almost obstructing the area to some extent. Our preference would be that if council did not have an offset scheme, that we could pursue that as opposed to internally within that courtyard area. But it's obviously at the election of the panel if they see that that's the more appropriate response. Again, it will obviously have to be managed very carefully, having regard to the security concerns with respect to somebody being able to climb, up on the fence and down from there. So, yeah, but we'd leave that at the discretion of the panel.
And Mr. West, the other question that I'd like to raise is, what's driving the height? I think it's 2.74 metres, the height of it. So I'm just wondering what's driving that. And also, I know that the depth of the car parking spaces is the standard 5.4, and that you're seeking to replace the wall in the same location as the existing fence. But in terms of actually, again, adding to the landscape quality of the street, I'm wondering whether there's an opportunity to create a planter, and I'm not necessarily talking about a high planter. You get planters for shrubs, that are only maybe 300 mil deep or something to that effect, along the whole back line of the car parking space. And in order to maintain the 5.4 depth of those spaces, that the new boundary wall will be set back in, whether it's 30 centimetres, 40 or... And I'm not talking about trees, I'm talking that address the scalable issue to do with the wall, but you could still really improve the visual impact of that wall and really mitigate it and enhance the streetscape with planting shrubs, like low-level shrubs along that back of the car park. What are your thoughts about that?
Thanks, Ms. President. I think that there would be obviously an opportunity to contemplate that. My only concern would be, particularly at the low level, I could just see practically, somebody pushing a little bit too far, potentially running over those shrubs. Whether we're perhaps better to look at going back to possibly council, and I'm thinking on my feet here, obviously, and don't have the opportunity to discuss directly with the client, but whether we would be better to look at that sort of solution around the entry, where council does have it, albeit that we suggested an alternative location, that we look at both sides of that pedestrian entry with that low-level planting. It might help the longevity of the planting per se, as opposed to it being hard up against the wall and the car parking space where it's probably going to be walked on potentially. Not a no again, but I think we could probably make it more effective if we were to do it in those areas around the pedestrian entry, such that they're having better presentation to the street than it is tucked in behind the car parking spaces where once they're full you can generally see them. But again, it's a discretionary decision for the panel.
And what's driving the height of the wall to 2.74? Is that
security? Yep.
I'm happy to just butt in there and just to make you aware that the rest of the perimeter of the complex, actually much of it is actually blast proof, such as the security threats, so that it's consistent with what we've done in other areas that unfortunately is the security need that the community experiences.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Everybody, made some good points there. We'll certainly give them our serious consideration when we come to our deliberations. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. We now move on to the last item of this public meeting. That is 46 Dudrick Street. I have Councillor Nelson just to speak.
I just wanted to say that if the panel is of a mind to approve this DA, it's imperative that the increased setbacks as per the recommendation are included or increased if the panel sees necessary, to ensure that there is no adverse impact of views towards the roof level of the adjacent buildings and towards the conservation area. Basically, I agree with the comments that the officer has made on page 129 of the report. And so I won't need to repeat that, but I think it's incredibly important if you want to mind to approve. And also I was wondering whether the panel would consider adding a condition for frosted glazing on the rear windows to address indirect overlooking issues raised by Jeff.
Okay. Questions, panel? Okay, thank you. I guess Heather?
Thank you, Councillor. Can I just clarify, were you saying you're happy with the condition recommended by the council, or you wanted a further increase in the setback?
Well, I would like we were of a mind, because it's harder for me to be looking at the plans. But certainly no less than what is recommended. If someone what they put forward before, but if you were of a mind to increase it, then to my mind it would be better. But I'm not the.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Okay, all right. Any other questions? On behalf of the applicant, Mr. Jellison.
That's correct. Is the panel able to hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. I've just listened to the previous comment. Sorry, my name is Alexander Jelicic. I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant. I'm also the architect for the project, and I've been involved on this project from day one. What I was going to just, I guess, agree with is with the previous speaker in regards to the council-imposed condition as part of this recommendation to move the western portion 1.8 metres. We are accepting that. We don't have an issue with this. I would just only want to suggest a couple of things. One is the reasoning behind it is probably more of a massing issue than a privacy from the way I was reading the report. And also in regards to the privacy, and I think the overlooking from a previous speaker talking about the potential frosting of the glazing. I mean, these are 2 bedrooms that have got already designed recessive window. So it's actually setting inside the sort of a dormer window arrangement. We also have on, if you look at the drawing DA 3.13, which is the west elevation, looking at those windows, we also have a screening of those windows as well with the privacy. So I guess I'll just, and these windows are not excessive, they're quite modest in size, and we're just concerned about frosting and that it would potentially diminish some of the amenity for those bedrooms. The other comment I would make is we've obviously had we had this report for a few days now, and we've looked at what's the outcome of pushing the the western side of the building in for 1.8 metres. With something like this, we can still maintain a 3-bedroom apartment size, which is being 90 to 95 units. We would like to sort of, I guess, ask the panel if the panel doesn't increase that setback more, because then it would potentially compromise our compliance with the apartment size. Now, that's, I guess, pretty much it from our end. In regards to the overall report, we're satisfied with the recommendation, and we obviously are available. I'm available to answer any questions should the panel have any questions.
Thank you. Panel members, questions? Yes, Heather? Yes?
I just want to clarify the affordable housing aspect of the development. The units that are the affordable housing, which ones are they?
So the units that are affordable housing are on a level 1, so which is already approved. So as you're aware, this development already has approval for the first 3 levels, ground and level 1 and 2. And then this
unknown participant is now exiting.
And the apartment in front of you today is also a second affordable apartment.
So, okay, and I understand to be affordable, there are conditions in the consent about complying with the affordable rental housing second slide. Have you spoken to a community housing provider who will be managing the unit?
Yes, we've spoken with a couple providers that have experiences with universities and also potentially with a hospital. So we have received some sort of initial preliminary feedback. The providers that we've been speaking to, they were very impressed with the plans, because obviously they quite often get put forward to them smaller units, like 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. These are obviously fairly generous apartments in a sense of the being able to accommodate the multiple children. So they think that this is going to be just apology. They'll work quite well for key worker housing.
And it does seem very generous to have the penthouse unit, as it were, as the affordable dwelling. Is there any particular reason why that's the case?
Well, at this point, it was a combination of factors. One was, I think, my understanding is at the moment that this project is looking to be obviously developed and kept long-term overall. So that's my understanding. So it wasn't really specific to what unit needs to be. There was some feedback from, I think, some of the real estate agents about preference, and the top unit being, we obviously not obliged to necessarily allocate particular units. The council basically gave us the free range which units we wish to seek to be affordable, and this is something that we've decided to go with. I mean, happy for the top unit to be affordable unit. And it's I think also to do with the breakdown of all the gross floor area allocation. It ended up working quite well from that point of view as well. For that level, yes. And I think unless the panel has got any issues with it, we are comfortable with the allocation the way it is today.
Okay.
Right. Thank you. Done, members? No other questions? No. Okay, look, thank you very much. We'll certainly take that into account when we come to our deliberations. That concludes these matters for the public meeting, and declare the public meeting closed. And if I can just say, we're scheduled to come back at 3 p.m. for our deliberations. I think we might use that time, so we had a short break earlier. Okay? Thank you all. Thank you very much for your assistance.
Thanks.
Meeting closed.
Is now exiting.